We're going to start our hearings with House File 1787. Representative Acomb, if you would come up and bring folks that you have with you.
Madam Chair, I don't know if you said, but do we know where 1787 is going? I'm guessing it's going to be going to higher ed potentially as a stop, or?
I have asked the Higher Ed Committee Chair if she wanted to see the bill, and I have not gotten an affirmative, and I've asked her twice, so I suspect it will just stay here.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Representative Acomb, with that, would you like to move your bill?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would like to move House File 1787 to be laid over. And I want to introduce a couple of people that are joining me this morning. First is Mike Bertelsen with the university, and also Shane Stemmis with the university. And so thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to present two related bills today. The first is House File 1787, the University of Minnesota Renewable Energy Transition. This bill appropriates $6 million to the University of Minnesota to establish goals and benchmarks for a rapid transition to renewable sources of energy in campus buildings, and requests reporting to the legislature on their progress. As a proud University of Minnesota alum, I know firsthand the opportunities available at the Twin Cities campus. Not only is it a large campus with a diverse makeup of buildings, parking lots, and open space, but it's a forward-thinking organization where innovation happens every day. We've heard testimony in this committee about the importance of addressing climate change as quickly as possible. We've also seen the intense advocacy of young people for moving to clean energy sources. By addressing renewable energy at college campuses, this bill achieves the dual goals of reducing greenhouse gases and creating educational opportunities around renewable energy. Yesterday, the governor shared a vision of 100% clean energy for the entire state by 2050, expanding on Governor Pawlenty's earlier goals. As a technology leader in the state, this bill looks to assist the university to accomplish this transition and to lead the way for the state. The University of Minnesota has an energy budget of over $50 million annually, and generating more of its own electricity will save them future dollars that can be used for other educational needs. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Bertelsen from the university, and he can tell us a little bit more about what they are doing, and then we'll take questions after that.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Thank you today, committee, for considering this funding for the university to accelerate our transition to renewable energy sources, and we're excited to work with you and the legislature on this idea. The university has had a long-term commitment to sustainability, and specifically this topic. The Board of Regents set policy for sustainability in 2004, and we joined the Second Nature Carbon Commitment in 2008, making a commitment to reduce greenhouse gases emissions to zero as soon as possible. And then in 2011, we actually adopted a specific plan for the Twin Cities campus to cut emissions by 50% by 2020, with a commitment long-term by 2050, as the governor just did, to get to zero for all campus buildings and transportation by 2050. While I'm talking now, Shane is going to show a little video of some of the on-site solar array that we've just been putting up on campus, so you can see that. Renewable low-emission sources of energy have been a focus for the last few years, and we have finished a combined heat and power plant in 2017 that reduces our annual emissions by 10 to 12%. Renewable energy sources above and beyond the grid are now tied to a significant portion of the Twin Cities campus electrical consumption. In fact, almost 70 million kilowatt hours, or 20% of our campus use, is now powered by solar. Those renewable sources include community solar, voluntary renewable purchases through Excel, and on-site solar generation, which you are seeing. We are also currently working on building on this progress as a member of the Minnesota Sustainable Growth Coalition with 30 organizations and businesses such as 3M, Target, Anderson, Best Buy, and General Mills within Minnesota leading a transition to clean energy. We've also signed an MOU with Excel for additional renewable energy supply through Renewable Connect and are leading a partnership for renewable energy purchasing with other Midwest higher education organizations. We don't have a specific plan, as this bill has been somewhat new to us, for exactly what we would do here, but we have a series of options that we are evaluating as you are evaluating the bill, including new renewable energy installations on campus, additional renewable energy purchases, or creating a carbon-neutral campus district, a part of the campus. So with that, we'll end my message, and glad to take any questions.
And maybe before that, I should say that we do have, there's an amendment,
Yes.
the A3 amendment.
Yes, if you'd like to move that amendment.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to move that amendment, which indicates that the appropriation maybe, and maybe I should be more specific, so to add on page 1, line 12, after the period, insert, this appropriation may only be expended on activities located within the electric service area of the public utility, subject to Minnesota statute, section 116C.779, subdivision 1.
And I understand that there is an amendment to the amendment. Is that yours, Representative Swisons?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And this amendment to the amendment, I'd like to offer the would it be the A7? And that simply deletes activities, inserts buildings, just because it's such a broad term and maybe narrows it down a little bit, maybe helps the bill. So, thank you.
Representative Acom?
Thank you, Representative. I think that what we were hoping to do is to allow the colleges some flexibility. So, for example, at the university, they have some that's over a parking lot, and in other places, they have it on buildings. And so, rather than being too prescriptive, we wanted to allow some flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Representative, so that is, we do have that amendment. Are you speaking to the amendment, Representative Garofalo, or to something else?
Madam Chair, so my point would be to the underlying amendment, but is also relevant to the amendment, but I can wait if you want me to.
Well, let's take the underlying amendment. Representative Acom is suggesting a no vote. All those in favor of the Swazinski amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
No.
Okay, the amendment does not carry. Now we are on the amendment. Representative Garofalo?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to either the author or to the testifiers. So the University of Minnesota, for example, has the Umore property down in Dakota County that's part of the U of M campus. It would seem that the language as it's designed with this amendment would preclude you from putting up a utility scale solar installation down there because you're not in the Excel service territory. And would kind of mandate that you would do because the Dakota Electric and Excel service territory runs right through that area. It would seem this amendment would preclude you from doing what is everyone knows is the most cost-effective way to do solar, and that is a large-scale utility. Is that your intent, or is that an accident?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know that I would say it's an accident. I don't think the bill is going to be able to cover every opportunity. And so our intent with the funds coming out of the renewable development account, wanting to ensure that they were also spent within that same area.
So, Madam Chair, and I think certainly I understand the intent of that, but also ultimately it's Excel ratepayers that are paying for it. In this case, it's the U of M as a ratepayer that's paying for it. Given that, I think we've taken testimony in this committee. I think everyone knows that rooftop solar over parking lots is far more expensive than a large-scale installation of solar on non-productive land. I don't think that's in dispute. I think we all agree to that. So is there a policy consideration for why we are seeing the most expensive way to produce renewable energy as opposed to a more cost-effective way?
I think that when you, as we've said, or has been said in the past, when you look at the cost of any of the sources of energy, it's not just the cost of installation, but the improvements to the environment and getting rid of other sources like coal. And so I appreciate the suggestion and desire to want to do utility rate solar. I would be open to that as well, just not in this bill.
Madam Chair, and to the author, on the points you made, I'll just let those slide, but we're not comparing coal to solar energy. We're saying that when it comes to solar energy, in this case, we have a menu of portfolio of options. Rooftop solar, which is the most expensive way to replace coal or natural gas. We have parking lot or commercial scale rooftops, which is still expensive, but, you know, they're on the tier. And then finally, large-scale installations. So we have large-scale, rooftop, and then stuff in between. And I'm wondering why we're seeing a series of bills, Madam Chair, that is focusing on rooftop and commercial-scale solar, and we're not even talking about the opportunities that are available to us to have carbon-free generation through hydro, through wind. And I'm just wondering, again, I understand the difference between coal and solar, but why would we be focusing on the most expensive way to reduce pollution, the most expensive way to build renewable energy, when we can achieve the policy outcomes of more jobs, reduce pollution, and more jobs and more energy generation in Minnesota in a more cost-effective way? Why would we do that?
I think Representative Long would like to respond to that, but I would also note that we're giving as much, this bill gives opportunities to the U, and one of those opportunities is to use renewable energy as a teaching tool. And that almost says that it should be on the campus. So there are other things to consider. As a teaching tool, it's hard to put a cost on it. Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question for our nonpartisan staff on the RDA account. Is it under law limited to being used in the Excel service territory?
Madam Chair and Representative Long, I don't believe it is stated that way in the statute, no.
Follow-up question, is there any intent that you can speak to in terms of the original drafting of the RDF around whether or not it was intended to be limitedly Excel service territory?
I really can't speak to that, no.
You could ask the author.
Where's the author?
Sitting right next to me. Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I think it seems to me the goal of this amendment is to not get into a debate about differing solar costs, but to be limiting the funding that's coming from the Renewable Development Account to Excel territory, as I suspect Representative Mahoney would say if he were here. One of the goals, I think, of the funding that is coming from Excel ratepayers for the casks is to try to help reduce costs and promote renewable energy within the Excel territory. And so it seems to me that that's the goal of this amendment.
And Madam Chair, since I was the author of that bill that became law, perhaps I could speak with some authority on the intent of that. Is that the ratepayer in question here is the University of Minnesota. I don't know why we would limit them by mandating a more inefficient process. Is there a dispute on that? Do people believe that large-scale solar programs are more cost-effective or less cost-effective than rooftop solar? I don't think we've taken any testimony on that, but maybe, is that your position, Representative Long?
I'm through the chair, please.
Oh, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, Representative Long.
Madam Chair, Representative Garofalo, I think that it is not in dispute that utility-scale solar is less expensive than rooftop solar. I think compared to what is always the question, and we know that solar costs are continuing to come down and likely are going to be cheaper than wind in the near term, and I think that that's also true for rooftop prices are coming down considerably. This bill is also not limited to solar. It's able to be used for energy efficiency and other purposes as the university sees fit.
Madam Chair, thank you for allowing the conversation, and I think you correctly pointed out that this is one of the benefits to doing it this way is it's a teaching tool. I'm just not sure that hitting the ratepayers with a 300% higher priced energy is their way to do it. The testifiers in their presentation mentioned that, participating in wind source and essentially buying renewable energy credits is a way that they could achieve the goal. And so if they're going to be doing that, obviously cost is a variable that they're looking at, and I'm not sure why we would add this bill to take what's going to be an expensive program and make it even more expensive, but that's, if you guys want to explain that, go ahead. If you don't, you got the votes and I don't, so.
With that, I see no, oh, was there a further question? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Representative Swazinski.
thank you, ma'am. It was just brought up as a teaching tool and just, maybe nonpartisan staff or the author. But what would be the complete list of activities allowed by, when we tried to focus it in on buildings, that didn't pass, but what would be all the activities listed that'd be eligible? That'd be great.
Madam Chair, Representative Swinzinski, I'm looking at lines 110 and 111 of the bill, where it says the university is to establish goals and benchmarks and implement a rapid transition toward the use of renewable fuels. I think that's the focus of what the money would be spent on. Any teaching tools would be done outside of funding in this bill.
So simply the technology, not curriculum, not, yeah.
That's the way I read it.
I see no further questions. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
The amendment carries. Okay. Are there further, now that the bill is in the, has been amended, are there other questions? Is there other testimony?
Madam Chair, I think we have the A5 amendment.
Oh. I'm sorry, there is another amendment. Representative Swazinski, Amendment A5.
Yes,
Would
thank you,
like
Madam
to-
Chair. I'd like to offer the A5 amendment. I'd like a roll call. This just simply, with the governor's new budget that will probably increase the educational costs on every student over $1,000 with his upcoming budget. We want to be able to protect students and their pocketbooks as much as possible. This ensures into law that utility rates and costs related to the energy for higher education does not go up. We've heard over and over that reductions will be 30%. Families will save $2,500 with this potential plan. This just locks it in the law that it will be guaranteed that students in schools of higher education will not pay higher energy costs because of this program. And ask you for your positive vote. Thank you.
Representative McComb.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative. I think that the intent of this is absolutely to be a cost saver. And so while I'm not prepared to accept the amendment as it's stated, I think that we can work to tighten up the language to ensure that that happens.
I see no further discussion. There has been a roll call. You did request a roll call. We will have a roll call on that.
Chair Wagenius,
No.
Representative Swazinski,
Aye.
Representative Acomb,
No.
Representative Baker.
Aye.
Representative Bierman. Representative Bowe.
Aye.
Representative Christensen. Representative Garofalo.
Yes.
Representative Halverson. Representative Hornstein. Representative Long.
No.
Representative Mahoney. Representative Meckland. Yes. Representative Stevenson.
So there's 6 nays and 5 ayes, and the amendment does not carry. Okay, now the bill is ready to be laid over. Is there further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, and either to the author or to nonpartisan research, Minnesota has a rather unique definition of the word renewable. I know what renewable means, but for purposes of this statute, does renewable include hydro?
I guess it wouldn't preclude it. It doesn't
Let's ask council if council can help out here.
Thanks.
Council?
Madam Chair, obviously, there is no definition of renewable in this bill. There are several definitions of renewable in the statutes. So I'd say at this point, it's unclear exactly which would fit under this definition.
Madam Chair.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the author. In your previous testimony, you stated the intent for reduced emissions. Would it be something, I'm not going to offer an amendment today, but as opposed to that term renewable being used, would it be possible to maybe replace that with carbon-free?
I think that could be considered. I think it, let's see. I think that there's room for the language to be tightened up. I'm not, at this point, willing to say one way or the other.
Madam Chair, and to the author, is there a goal? I'll leave that go. Second question would be, and this is more for members of the committee than maybe the author, but in statute, we currently have a process to appropriate from the RDA where we're supposed to get approval from the Public Utilities Commission, a panel. That's the way we're supposed to appropriate money from the RDA. And I'm wondering, it looks like we're bypassing that process by using this language. Is there what are the reasons for that as opposed to using the process that's in law?
I think we can ask council about that too, because the process, as you set up, had some holes in it. So if we can certainly change that by law this year if we so choose and think that the holes need to be cleaned up, but I haven't seen a bill to that effect yet. Council.
Madam Chair, I believe Representative Garofalo is referring to the expenditures under 116C.779 that are for the grant program. There's a long history of the legislature appropriating money out of this fund for other purposes. And I believe Representative Garofalo may have done so himself as chair in the past.
Let's not let that get in the way of a good point now. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you allowing the conversation on this.
Okay. Representative Bowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Acom, I like the thought of helping the U of M as a leader in our community to move forward. But my question is, do we know what the money will be spent on as far as working to establish goals? I kind of like the thought of putting the money toward, is that positive feedback or negative feedback? Of the thought of, or the possibility of looking towards spending the money on specific projects to start to make progress going forward instead of spending a lot of money on studies. I wondered your thoughts.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair and Representative. I think the intent, as I've spoken to, is really to get more and new renewables at the university. And so it wouldn't be the intent that it's spent to be doing a lot of planning. The hope is that it would be implementation. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, very good. Yeah, Madam Speaker, I like that thought too of using $6 million as a way to make steps forward rather than just kind of sitting around and planning the route we might take at a later point.
Agreed.
Madam Speaker, Representative Acom,
Chair,
can you tell me
not
also,
Speaker.
is it all of the U of M? Is it specific buildings? You know, what is kind of the target that we would want to shoot for?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative. The Twin Cities campus, I believe, is the only facilities within the Excel territory. And so while there are many other universities and land that they own outside of that, it would be primarily the campus.
And those are all served by Excel, is that right, in the Twin Cities campus?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Mecklin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question pertaining to, are there any of the buildings that within this campus are recently built or retrofitted for higher efficiency, HVAC or anything like that?
Madam Chair, Representative, yes, we are we have pretty high standards for any new or renovation for facilities. So we do energy conservation at those times. In addition to that, we have teams that are working on retrofitting and recommissioning buildings sort of on an ongoing basis.
Madam Chair. Is it currently are you currently using natural gas for like heat or any other appliances or sort for energy consumption there?
Madam Chair, Representative, natural gas is our primary fuel for heating the campus, as well as with the combined heat and power plant we've just opened recently. We use natural gas to fire the turbine, which creates 22 megawatts of electricity. And then there's a primary source for the boilers to heat the campus.
Madam Chair. So in this plan that you are going to put together, would that potentially include eliminating all of this relatively newer, possibly newer technology that you have where you're using gas to get rid of the gas?
Madam Chair and Representative, I don't believe that would be the case. No, I think the size and expanse of the campus is such that the $6 million, there's plenty of opportunities, and $6 million would not get to the place that it would eliminate that base capacity. Or
One more, Madam Chair. So the intent would be to leave the natural gas in place going forward?
Madam Chair, Representative, at this time, we're building plans, and we're we're starting to draft a master plan, which I think will get us, hopefully move us off of that over the long term. But for now, this would not be sufficient for us to eliminate natural gas use on campus.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I see no other further questions, and so with that, we will lay over this bill for possible inclusion. Thank you.
Madam Chair.